How's it going, guys, and welcome to Celta Deino's second week PPL match against Sport Lisbon Brafica. Now, in this match, I've changed up the team ever so slightly, and I will talk you through that right now. We got off to a bad start last week because we lost 1-0 very barely against Shroom Raver, and quite frankly, looking back on that game, it does feel like a load of things just went slightly wrong. Literally, I had the upper hand in that game and I let it slip, so I thought I wasn't going to make that mistake again this time. So I made two changes to the team. Two members that did a good job last time, actually. Bronzong, who got the rocks up, which really very nearly won me the game, and my other member that got replaced, I believe, was Rampados, because it didn't particularly do much besides prevent the Gyarados sweep. But the members that they were replaced with are Regirock, couldn't speak then, Regirock and Hydreigon. So my team looks like Regirock, Lumineon, Mega Bayonet, Hydreigon, Sylveon and Garchomp. The reason for Regirock was I had a feeling that Titos was going to be bringing the Ambipom and the Charizard, and Ambipom can't do anything at all to Regirock, and neither can Mega Charizard. If it was Mega Charizard Y, I probably wouldn't have brought it, but it was Mega Charizard X, and I thought I needed something that could reliably take out those two while being able to threaten anything else on his team. It can threaten the Togetic and quite a few other Pokemon. I also drafted into this match Hydreigon. I replaced Bronzong with Hydreigon because I thought that, well, he's got a rather slow team, and because I'd been talking all week about how I was going to bring Trick Room to pretty much every game, so I thought I'd bluff a little bit and not bring a Trick Room setter. I did, however, go with Lumineon, who has the Tailwind, just in case Titos wanted to bring a load of really fast things, but that didn't really work out, because if you look, the only fast things he has are the Ambipom, which has Fake Out and would outspeed it anyway, the Charizard, which would probably be using Dragon Dance to outspeed me anyway, Lucario, which has Bullet Punch and would probably outspeed me anyway, and the rest are slow, so there would be not really much point in bringing Tailwind. However, instead of the Tailwind, I decided if I wanted to gain some speed control, it would be a good idea if I kept with Garchomp. If I kept with Garchomp, then I would be able to outspeed all of these things, but I couldn't let them set up on me. And you'll see that this actually does come in handy at some point. I kept with Sylveon because I believed that Sylveon was going to be able to really help me out here, since he didn't pack a load of things that were able to take Hyper Voices very well. I felt like with Sylveon around, I could literally just do the same thing I did to Shroom Raver and just Hyper Voice everything. And yeah, it usually is a very good strategy, and I'm not sure how it works, but we'll see. Hydreigon here I thought would be able to do some kind of damage to everything in the team. I thought that Hydreigon would have been able to really do a lot of damage here, because he had a lot of Pokemon in his whole team that were weak to anything Hydreigon would throw at them. But that necessarily didn't do much for me, because as you look, Titos brings the Togetic, which completely counters Hydreigon unless it carries Flash Cannon. I was so wrapped up before this game in changing a load of my Pokemon sets, I didn't change Hydreigon's, because it just didn't occur to me that Flash Cannon would really help out. So I left it with the moveset it had, and that meant that Hydreigon was in this Togetic's back pocket for a lot of the game. So yeah, next on to Mega Bayonet. I didn't make any changes to it, but I thought that if it did manage to get a setup with Lucario or Charizard, I would have been able to do something to it. Because if it, well, not necessarily the Lucario, but I thought that I would be able to at least sponge a knockoff from the Ambipom, absorb some Fake Outs, that kind of stuff, and be able to knock out the Charizard if it gets a load of Dragon Dances up and sacrifice itself, that sort of thing. And that's a very valid strategy, I thought. I thought it would have been able to do a lot for me, but hey ho, we'll see how it works. Lumineon, like I said, I just didn't replace a lot of the moves on it. I decided that I'd keep Tailwind just in case, but I knew I wouldn't probably be using it. But hey ho, we'll just get into this match and we'll see how it goes. Now, before this match starts, I just want to warn you that this was a very long match. It was nearly 56 minutes in total because it was a strategic war. But hey ho, I lead out with my Regirock, and Titos here decides to lead out with a Blastoise. Not a Blastoise, sorry. Oh my god, wow, I got that completely wrong. He leads out with a Porygon too, of course. wow, Tito's goes straight for the Ice Beam to see how much my Regirock is invested in special defense, and he finds out that it's not very invested in special defense at all. I set up the Stealth Rocks on the first turn while and he then switches out his Porygon into Blastoise, obviously trying to get rid of them. Now at this point, I went for a Thunder Wave thinking he'd probably bring in the Lucario or something, but for some reason he brought in the Blastoise, and that really didn't help me because, well, it did and it didn't. It meant that this Blastoise was going to be able to get a load of leftovers health because I didn't really pack anything that was able to take it out reliably. So I switched straight into my Lumineon here, trying to get a nice prediction early on. I get the prediction and I managed to get a Storm Drain boost. And that was just a little bit of a confidence booster. I thought that it would be of big help for me if I was able to get some kind of boost. It didn't. I went for a Skull just to judge how much it would do. And he tries to go for the Rapid Spin there, I could kind of tell, and unfortunately, he gets Parahax. Now, the reason I went for the Skull there was just to judge what kind of defense this thing had. Obviously, it was especially defensive Blastoise, I learned that now, because I go for the U-turn just thinking that this is going to take forever, and I really need those Stealth Rocks just to deal with the Togetic and the Charizard. So I go straight into Onesie, thinking that he's going to go for the Rapid Spin again. And he gets Parahaxed yet again, but he told me after the game he had gone for Rapid Spin there. So that did me a big favour because it meant that I can get a free turn to Mega Evolve here. Because normally I would have to lead off with it and hope they led with something favourable, but this gave me a free chance to go for my Mega Evolution and hit it with an Infestation. Which, it really didn't do anything, and quite frankly, this next portion of the battle was me literally just trying to get some damage off on this Blastoise so that I can knock it out later on in the match. Next turn, after Blastoise gets hit by the Infestation, which does a fair amount, but it means that I have to keep going for the Infestation. I have to keep wearing this thing down because I can't afford to let this thing knock me out. It goes for a Dark Pulse, and because I made this Banner especially defensive, it just eats up that Dark Pulse. That's funny because I don't see a lot of Blastoises running Dark Pulse unless they're the Mega. So for this thing to carry Dark Pulse specifically from my Bannet was quite an interesting play. I go for the Infestation again, trying to get a little bit more damage off. It gets a crit luckily, but it doesn't do that much at all with the crit. Dark Pulse goes off again, and that kind of helps out, for him anyway, because it means that I'm not particularly going to be able to switch into a lot now. And at that point I thought, if I'm not really going to be switching into anything, I might as well just go for another Infestation, or risk getting critted on the next turn and get this thing to below half so I can probably residually take it out. He goes for another Dark Pulse and it gets me down to 13 health. I don't get critted luckily, but it does mean that I'm unable to really do anything with this Bannet, so I could stay in and go for a Destiny Bond here, but I thought it would probably be a good idea for me to switch out at this point. I'll go into Fernando, thinking that he's going to go for another Dark Pulse, and I can take it out with a Hyper Voice, but it goes for Scald. Now, as you see, it does absolutely nothing, but it gets burnt. And that really doesn't help me out in the match. Because my idea with Fernando here was to stay in on a lot of things and hit them with Hyper Voices because they wouldn't be able to break me down. That burn meant that I couldn't stay in because I was slower than a lot of his team and I wasn't going to be able to break a lot of them down. So he switches straight to the Lucario for some reason. I'm not too sure why. But those rocks break the sash that he told me he was carrying, I believe. And the Hyper Voice just straight up smashes it in the face. I spoke to him after the game. Well, I've looked at his analysis and he says that he didn't think I was going to be carrying Specs again. He thought that I was going to be carrying a different set. So I kind of came out on top in that regard. But he goes straight into the Porygon 2. And I go into Regirock, because I know that Regirock can sponge a hit. But he double switches out into this Togetic. And it gets the Rocks damage. I went to go for a Rock Slide here, as this Togetic just uses Protect on me, trying to scout out what kind of attacking move I have, and he can see that I have Rock Slide now. So he switches straight back out and just goes, oh, this thing is going to be doing too much damage, let's just go back into the Porygon, because Porygon, it may be a specially defensive set, but it certainly doesn't have bad defense. it's certainly got a good defense stat. So, as you can see, it just eats up that rock slide and uses recover the next turn, which meant that I wasn't able to do anything with my Regirock to this thing. While in return, obviously, like, he avoids the attack there, but it doesn't really matter because I wouldn't have done any damage to him at all. He goes straight for an Ice Beam, which does get a crit, but that I wasn't looking at my game screen at the time that crit came out, so I didn't see that it was a critical hit. And I decided it would probably be a good idea not to risk going for another one. So, because I didn't see that it was a critical hit, I decided I was going to just stay in, and yeah. Now, I was hoping that I could get some kind of status off on this Porygon to make it a little bit easier to deal with. So, I go Scald Fishing, and I get the burn, which was absolutely fantastic. I knew that I would need some kind of status on this thing to actually do any kind of like major damage to it. So I thought it'd probably be a good idea to, you know, just give it a go. And it worked out. It honestly worked out. So, like, as you can see, this thing's now got a lot of pressure on it because it's going to be taking damage every turn from the burn, and well, it's not going to be a lot of damage, and it does have the recover, so it can heal it up, but it does mean that it's occasionally going to have to take a load of risks. So I go straight into Marcelo, thinking that I could bluff him that I was going to go for some kind of special move to try and, like, break it down. But, as you can see, I have packed Superpower on this Hydreigon, because I knew that he'd probably bring the Porygon, and I thought that it would probably be a good idea to bring it. So I use the Superpower as he switches into Togetic, and it does absolutely god nothing. Nothing at all. And this is the oh, excuse me. This is the moment I was hoping that I would be able to use Flash Cannon. But unfortunately I didn't pack it, so that's a bit of a shame, and it really does come back to bite me in the ass, because this thing goes for a Wish, and yeah, well, as you can tell, it's going to get all of its health back next turn. I'm not too sure why it was a Wish Passer, and I'm not too sure why he didn't just go straight into Blastoise here, but for some reason he stays in as I rest and get my Chesto Berry back to wake me up, and it just goes for another Wish. I think that was a misplay. I honestly thought that was a misplay, but it wasn't. So I think it was just a misclick. So it wasn't a misplay or anything. It was just a misclick, and that meant that he didn't particularly want to risk getting Rock Slided again, and he switches straight out into Porygon. Now that was, I believe, his first mistake, not passing that Wish to Blastoise, because I wouldn't have been able to do anything to the Blastoise, and that Wish right there would possibly have meant that he would have been able to get his rocks off like earlier in the match. So I'll go for a Rock Slide on this thing just to get a bit more damage off and hopefully try and get it into a range where I can do some kind of damage to it. I have Lumineon out now because I switched into it as he goes for the recover, just because I thought it would be a good idea to go for some Skulls or some kind of other thing. Like, I go for a Tailwind instead though, thinking that if I can blast through this Porygon, then I would be able to do some kind of sweep or something. But he gets a crit with the Tri-Attack, which is massively unfortunate. But it's not actually that unfortunate, because it does mean that I get 3 turns of Tailwind instead of the 2 that I would have got if I'd have survived. So that is a very interesting thing. I bring out my Hydreigon and then double switch out into Machu, as I think that it's going to go for the switch into into Togetic, but instead of switching into Togetic, he stays in, predicts me to bluff a double switch, and goes for the Ice Beam. That doesn't really help in the slightest, because I go for the Rock Slide, thinking that maybe on one of these 2 turns I can get a flinch, and that would help me out in the long run. Now, I go for another Rock Slide here, because I've got one last turn of Tailwind, and I outspeed it. It takes it just down into red, but I don't get the flinch I need, which means that this thing's able to recover all its health back, and that really does annoy me, because like in this game I was actually screwing a lot. I was getting really annoyed because it was a load of turns of doing nothing, trying to do something and failing to break down this back 2 defense he's got. I decided that I wanted to try and take an Ice Beam and see if I can survive it, just so I can get all my health back with rest. Because I have a feeling that Machu's going to be a massive help at some point, and I thought that I'd keep my Regirock around. At that point, I knew that I didn't really want to stay in. He was probably going to go for a recover here because he had a load of free turns, so I go into Marcelo, and he goes for a recover. Now, because of what he did last turn, and by not switching out, I thought maybe he was going to try and do that again, so I had no reason not to go for a superpower here, because I had no one else I could really switch into to threaten his Togetic. I couldn't go back into Regirock because it was asleep and it would have taken a load of turns to wake him up, so I thought, why not? I'll go for a superpower. Fortunately, I don't. Unfortunately, he does switch into Togetic and he doesn't stay in, so he's pulled 3 out of 3 predictions on my Hydreigon correctly, so he's done very well in that regard. I switch into Wanzi here, thinking it's going to go for the Wish. Goes for the Wish, which means that I'm in a good position here because I've managed to get Wanzi in correctly. I'll go for a Pain Split here, revealing it, and that pulls me up to 55 health, not as much as I thought. They go for the Dazzling Gleam, thinking they would have took me out if I'd have stayed on the 18 health, but it puts me back onto 18 health, so I've just Pain Splitted the exact amount I've just been given. So I'll go for a Destiny Bond on this turn, thinking that they're going to take me out again, but it goes for a Yawn, and I really, really don't want my Banner asleep. Now that doesn't break Sleep Clause because I put my Regirock to sleep myself by using Rest, and Sleep Talk would only activate if I had not put it to sleep. If he'd have put 2 Pokemon of mine to sleep, then he would have broken the clause. But I switch into Garchomp as he goes for the Wish, and next turn I go for an Iron Head. It gets flinched, luckily, which allows me to put a lot more pressure on and keep Garchomp at full health. I go for another Iron Head here, and would you believe it, I get another flinch, which is incredible, which means that I can actually take out that Togetic at some point. If that thing had been able to get off another Wish there and protect itself, I would have been in a massively bad position. Now he brings in the Blastoise again here, and I go for Iron Head again. And I know that that's not going to be enough to take it out, so I was never going to get anywhere like that. I thought that the best thing I could do right now is to switch out into someone and try and get my Banner in. So I switch in Wanzi, thinking that he's going to go for the Rapid Spin, and they actually do go for the Rapid Spin, not the Ice Beam. So I predicted correctly there. There was no point staying in because my Garchomp was Scarfed, so I needed to make the prediction there. I switch in like Banner to block the Rapid Spin, and I go for the Destiny Bond. But it gets paralyzed again, which puts me in a really awkward position because now I have to think, is he going to go for a Rapid Spin, predicting me to switch out? Is he going to bluff attacking me, or is he going to change his original plan now? He didn't change his original plan, luckily, and go straight for a Dark Pulse, which was really needed because I needed that Blastoise out of the way. That thing was going to be an incredibly annoying thing to take out, especially because it was paralyzed, and I couldn't have risked getting a Wish pass to it. If he'd kept that Blastoise around and managed to pass a Wish to it, I would have been in a horrible position. However, I had a feeling he was going to go into Ambipom here, so I thought I'd try and burn off a turn of rest by switching in Regirock, because, let's face it, Ambipom can't do anything to Regirock. He decides to go for a knockoff, which he told me afterwards was a misplay, and he meant to go for U-turn and he accidentally clicked knockoff. That really helps me because now I can waste another turn of sleep, knowing that next time I attack, I will be able to wake up and actually hurt whatever comes in. However, he switches in the Porygon from the U-turn, knowing that he can do some kind of damage to me. He can do some kind of damage with an Ice Beam or a Tri-Attack, go for some status, but he goes for a Recover, which kind of annoys me because now this thing's at full health yet again. And at this point, I started to realise the only way I was going to be able to break down this Porygon was to be able to hit it with a Hyper Voice. Because if I'd have just kept going for Rock Slides, trying to wear it down, it would have just kept recovering me, and I would have had to rest, and it would have Ice Beamed me to death, so I wouldn't have been able to break it down with Regirock. So what I do is I switch in Marcelo, and it goes for a Shadow Ball, which reveals its last move. So it has Tri-Attack, Ice Beam, Shadow Ball, and Recover. Not too sure why Shadow Ball, I think it was for Mega Bayonet. I think he packed that because he wanted to bring it in on Mega Ban or something, but he knows I'm going to go for a superpower here. And I want him to switch in the Togetic because it's already in yellow health, it's going to get Stealth Rock damage, it's going to take a Life Orb superpower, albeit it's going to take it very well, but it means that now I do outspeed with Marcelo, and I'm able to go for a Dark Pulse next turn, outspeeding it and killing it. So bringing in that Togetic there was literally... well, it was the only move he could have done. He knew he had to sacrifice it. But now that that Togetic's down and out of the way, I'm able to really assert some offensive pressure with Marcelo. Because he doesn't want to take a Draco Meter, he doesn't want to take a Dark Pulse on anything left on his team. And if he does switch in the Porygon, I've got superpower for it. But he brings an Ambipom to fake the fake out, and I go straight into Regirock as he goes for the U-turn, like successfully, correctly predicting what I'm going to do. He U-turns on my Regirock, and he switches out, I believe, the Porygon again, which takes a Rock Slide to the face. No, it doesn't, because, wait, does it? I'm not too sure, quite frankly. I switch out Regirock again, that's it, okay, I remember now. I switch out Regirock again and go straight into Sylveon, knowing that he's going to go for a Recover here, which, in turn, he does. He goes for the Recover. Now, the reason I hadn't brought out Sylveon Fernando a lot more was simply because I didn't want to take unnecessary burn damage on it, because Fernando was going to be really useful in taking out something at some point. I wanted to keep it at as high health as possible. I'll go straight for a Hyper Voice here, which does an incredible amount of damage to a specially defensive Porygon. It uses Ice Beam on Sylveon. It's not enough to take it out, and it means that the burn is going to be enough to take out the Porygon 2 this turn. And that's Titos' defensive wall. That's their centre-back pairing, if you want to use a football term. That's their defence completely gone. They have no defence. Well, they have no defence left. The only thing stopping me from sweeping is this Ambipom, to be honest. So I let him take me out with a U-turn to see what he's going to switch into, knowing full well that I can take out everything he has left with my Garchomp. So I let him switch in. I let him go into, I think this is the Charizard. Yeah, he goes into his Charizard, which takes half its health from the Stealth Rock damage. Now, it wouldn't really have mattered either way, because I would have outsped and been super effective on it if he had not had the Stealth Rocks up. But I go into Garchomp, and because I'm Scarfed, I am faster than this Charizard. I think I would have been faster than it anyway, but that's just to make sure. So he's had to Mega Evolve on turn 1, because that's one of the rules of the PPL. If you have a Mega, you have to Mega Evolve on your first turn. You can't do anything else. You have to Mega Evolve. And I would have been super effective. So I use Outrage there. He brings in the Ambipom, hoping to get some kind of damage off on me. He goes for the Fake Out, which does a bit of damage, but it's nothing serious. And that Fake Out means that I'm not going to get confused from this Outrage. And it means that I'm not going to get confused from that one, because I got a 3-turn one. The Outrage would have taken it out nonetheless. That crit really didn't matter. And that's the game. So the only thing stopping me from sweeping there was that Togetic and that Porygon 2. Once they were gone, I knew I had the game sorted, and yeah, but parts of this match really felt like a strategic war or something. They felt like I had to make every single decision correct, and if I got one wrong, it would have meant that I was going to get punished. However, I got lucky with quite a few of my predictions. I got lucky with quite a few of these these moves we made. I got quite lucky. He got a lot of power hacks, which was unfortunate with the Blastoise, and there was a couple of flinches on Togetic, which really didn't help him out. But in the end, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that those flinches and paralyzes did do something. They really did help me out, because the game was already about to finish. It was about to end as a draw, because it was gonna time out, and those flinches meant that we actually had a decision. So I would have had more Pokemon left in the end, but the fact of the matter is, he would have got a point if it wasn't for those flinches and those paralyzed hacks. So luckily, I've been helped out by the Hacks gods, and I've managed to turn 1 point into 3. So I feel bad for Titos. I feel really bad for Titos because he played brilliantly. He made some great predictions and was really messed over by power hacks and flinches. But that's all part of the game, and I do feel bad for him. I really do, and I'm not sure that game would have turned out the same way otherwise. But at the end of the day, it's just what happens. So, thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate it, as always. If you enjoyed this episode or this battle, don't forget to smash a like on it. And, yeah, go and check out the rest of the PPL, because we have a load more weeks coming, and we should have a recap video coming sometime during the week. So, thank you for watching. I've been Wanted Bayonet, and this has been Celta Deino. So, thank you, guys, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye!